Everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aspertillo.ai, and I've got Kevin Diaz, and we're talking about his great new book, The Problem First Method, a framework for innovative product builders. I was saying just before we go live, I really enjoyed it, Kevin, because of where we are in terms of our startup of Aspertillo. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. So where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Connect, say hi. Love meeting new people.
Okay, excellent. And thank you for dialing in from Japan at midnight.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. So the book, as I said, I really enjoyed it. For me, it was a real page turner because it's something that's really relevant for us. So what was the inspiration behind it?
So there are really two. So one is I have a terrible long-term memory, and I have three young boys. And I was thinking, 20 years from now, when they're entering the workforce, I feel like I have a lot of good stories and, failures, things that I could teach them, but I didn't want to lose those. So I wanted to get those written down so that I could have something to hand to my boys, as they're starting their own careers. But also, secondly, I was, working at Ambiki. So we're making software for speech language pathologists to help them run their practice. And that software can be really complex. But I felt these pressures that we were jumping to solutions before we really understood the problem. And I felt that there are these forces that are pushing like smart and competent teams that know that you shouldn't skip that step, but there are these forces that were pushing them to quickly jump to solutions. And so part of the book was like, how could I get that out, articulate it? And that writing process, at first, it was just smaller essays, but then it turned into like, all right, like as I start to train my team, I feel like I have this thing that could become a book.
We've all been there. Well, I have, having been in sales, where, you turn up at the office and say, we have to have this special feature to win this deal. And you basically, it's like a gun to a head to the people. So right at the start of the book, you tell a great story about a practice owner who was about to walk away unless you built autopay. You spent 3 months building it, launched it, and nobody cared. You talk about it a lot in the book. Why did that specific failure teach you about the difference between what customers say they want versus what they actually need?
Yeah. So in this case, just to give a little context for the listeners. So at the speech therapy private practice, this is pediatrics. They're usually seeing kids, and they might see kids once a week or twice a week, but it's the same kind of recurring patient that you have. And so there were these, and we serve everything from a solo private practice. They started their own business up to like they have 50 therapists under them. So our competitor had this feature called autopay, which a lot of solos that were coming to us wanted, which, the parent would put the credit card on file, and every time they have a session, it would just automatically charge their card. So, that story that you speak of, I was on a demo and they asked like, hey, can you have autopay? And my first instinct was just to say, yeah, we can build that. Right.
Of course.
But, it turns out that our customer, our ICP, so our ideal customer profile, was a little bit larger practices. So not the solos, but the 5 to 50 size. And for them, what we learned after we launched this is they didn't really want autopay because they had patients that had more complex needs. They might have insurance plus, the private pay portion of that. And they might be dealing with patients that are in economically disadvantaged areas where, the mom needs to wait till Thursday for her paycheck to clear before she can make the payment. So they needed more flexibility. They didn't want that rigid, like every session, it automatically charges the card. So really what they wanted was more features to make their jobs more efficient around the paying aspects of it, but not that specific feature. So if we had done a little bit more discovery, if we had stayed with the problem a little bit longer, we probably would have learned that before we spent 3 months building that and launching it, and then talking to customers and being like, well, why aren't you using this?
Because you use that. You start off the book with that issue, and then you keep referring back to that as basically a lesson learned. And I think one of the things that you clearly learned was the fact that you became far more aware exactly what your ideal customer persona was, because we all start off with saying, well, we're going to sell it to everybody with a pulse, and if they haven't got a pulse, we'll kick them, anyway, in chapter 5, you talk about the dopamine trap of solutions. Why do product teams and finders find it so incredibly satisfying to launch a new feature, even when deep down they haven't fully validated it solves a real problem?
Yeah, and I think this goes to, like, I'm a builder by nature. I'm not, my weakness is the sales and marketing side. So I love building things. I love seeing that come to fruition. And especially in this age, AI is making it easier and easier to build new features, to prototype things, to get it in a user's hand. And so there is that dopamine rush. And part of it is also maybe the ego, right? Like, if a customer comes to you and says, like, hey, or your team says, like, hey, can we have discount codes built into the checkout process? As a builder, your ego is saying, oh yeah, of course I can build that. Like, I know exactly which API I should use, and we can do this and that. Before, slowing down a little bit and ask, well, what do we need discount codes for? How often is that going to be used? Is there another way that we could potentially accomplish that same thing? So yeah, part of it, I think, is, there's that excitement in building a new thing and seeing it come to fruition. There's that ego part of it of, like, oh yeah, I can build that. Like, I have the means to do it. So I think those are two of the bigger factors that go into it.
Yeah, it was the discount codes is the one where they wanted it for the conference, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
you worked out that actually the number of discount codes was, you could just do it manually.
Right. In that situation there, we were targeting these bigger customers, and we were heading into this national convention where, we might have had, 20 or 30 that we would have expected to use this discount code. And, all of those would have been going through our full sales demo process with an hour onboarding and all of that, where, our salesperson could just enter that discount in on their own. Versus, like, if we actually built it into the software, it would have taken us a few weeks to develop it and launch it, and we'd have to maintain it. But yeah, the first instinct when the salesperson asks for that is going to be like, oh yeah, of course I can build that, and I know exactly which API to use, and that sort of thing.
One of the biggest anxieties for any product builder is feature parity. Seeing a competitor launch something and panicking. You argue that because the competitor has it, it is never good enough reason to build. How do you recommend founders maintain their discipline and stay problem first when sales or investors are screaming at them to copy a competitor?
Yeah, and I would go back to that autopay story that we just talked about. So that one came from a competitive pressure. And so what you don't know about your competitors is, why did they implement that? They might have jumped to a solution. They might have a different ideal customer profile than you do. They might be, even though they're in the same market, then they might be solving for something a little bit different. So if you just blindly copy them, it might not be a good fit for your specific customer. But also, I think, sometimes just jumping to copy your competition, the best you're going to end up is with a copy of your competition, right? Like, how do you make your product unique? How do you understand best to solve your customers' problems? I think if you focus more on getting to, like, what is the root problem, you're going to have a better chance of success because you're going to have a better chance of coming up with an innovative solution that solves real problems.
You have a great line in the book. If you've been around product teams for long, you've probably filled out your fair share of product requirement documents, PRDs. They're supposed to provide clarity. Often they provide paperwork. Tell us about your alternative, the feature aligned document, the FAD, and how does a 90-second tool save months of wasted engineering time?
Sure. So I think what I was noticing is that a PRD is more when you already have a solution, a product, a feature in mind, and you're doing the work of detailing and communicating what's it going to look like and all of those things. What I wanted was something that was a step before that. So how can we get more clarity on the problem before we start describing the solution? And so that was what we called the feature alignment document. And it actually, it morphed over the years. So when it started, at the bottom was a line that asked, like, what is the user or business problem that you're solving? And I still found that our team we're getting in situations where we had solved the wrong problem or we had skipped that step. So then about 2 or 3 years, after the original creation of that document, I just moved that line up to the top. And that forcing function of having it be the first thing that the writer of the document has to think about, the first thing that the reader of the document has to think about, that ended up being a big change that had a big impact. And after that, the team was much more focused on, making sure we got that right. So I think for teams out there, if you can do that step, before you write your PRDs, is the big piece is like really diving into understanding what's the problem you're solving and can you articulate that without using solution language? Because it's easy for that solution language to creep in when you try to describe something. You want to say like, oh, we're gonna have SMS messaging, or we're gonna have an AI chatbot. Well, the AI chatbot, like, that is the solution. What is the problem it's solving? So can you strip out that solution language and articulate the problem without using it?
You wrote that naming assumptions don't make them true. It just makes them testable. When a team is looking at your 10-question problem validation checklist, how do they actually measure or prove customer pain before writing a single line of code?
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to 3 big questions that you want to get understanding on of whose problem is it, how painful is it, and like how wide is the blast radius? Like, is this just impacting one customer, or is this 20 or 30 customers that have the same problem? And then how impactful will it be if we solve it, right? So if this is something that is only gonna save a minute for 5 customers, or if this is something that's gonna save a couple hours for 50 customers, and it's gonna allow us to raise our prices by $10 because we have this new thing that is really going to help a lot of customers. If you can try to measure that impact, and you can't always do it in dollars, but if you can try to think about the ROI of what is the impact if we solve this successfully, and what does that look like if this is solved successfully, I think those are ways that you can start to evaluate, have we focused in on the right thing to solve?
Most tech companies run on a traditional product roadmap, which are essentially timelines of solutions we promise to build. You propose replacing this with a problem atlas. What does a problem-driven roadmap actually look like in daily practice?
Yeah, so this one for me, when I think of a map is very detailed, right? Like, you have street names, and you might see buildings on there and specific locations. But an atlas is a little less so, right? Like, you might have valleys and mountain ranges, but it's not as detailed. So I wanted something that, when we had to produce a roadmap for our customers or for an investors. It had to be a list of features. So it was already like we had to know what we were building. I wanted something before that to understand, like, all right, for this next quarter, what are the top priorities? What are the problems we need to solve? So what we did and what ended up becoming the problem atlas was it basically surveyed the team. And I asked them, this was just a simple like Microsoft form survey. And I asked them, list me the top 3 problems that you're seeing in the software on the product side that our customers have. But then also at the company level, what are the top 3? And this might be broader things like, we're not getting enough top of funnel leads or things like that. And so everybody at the company did it because it was great to get the various perspectives from the sales team, what they see, from the marketing team, from the support team. And then I took all of those answers and I did a second survey, and I removed the duplicates, and I just had basically this long list of like, these are all the problems that everybody across our company came up with. And then the second time through, I had them rank them on what we just talked about, right? Like, how impactful would it be if we solve this problem? And how painful is this problem? Like, how well do we know that this is a problem that we need to solve? And I just had them do a simple kind of 1 to 5 star ranking. And that really helped. Like, it was very clear which problems rose to the top. And that helped us to inform, what our strategy would be for the next quarter. What were the top things that we wanted to prioritize? And then we could figure out, all right, like, how are we going to solve those? What does the solution look like?
You have a chapter on reading between the lines and playing detective with customer support messages. Can you give me an example of a time a customer asked for a specific tool, but digging into the support logs, you realized the actual issue was completely different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one insight for me, and one of the things I cover in the book, was that customers have gotten so much more sophisticated than when I started my career in software, 10 years or so ago. 10 years ago, they would come to you and they didn't even know what was possible with technology. And if you built something for them, they're like, oh, Kevin, you're a magician. This is amazing. I didn't even know this was possible. But in today's world, that's not at all the case. Like, they're using tens, hundreds of apps daily. They've seen good UX. They've seen poor UX. Today's customer knows very well what they want, and they're more likely to even suggest a solution like, I need this export to Excel button here, or I want to be able to print this page to PDF, or whatever it is. And getting to your question, if you dig past it, so for example, if you have a support question come in and the customer says, like, I really need this report exported to Excel, your first inclination might be, all right, like, it's pretty easy to add an export to Excel there. But if we can dig a little bit below the surface and ask, well, once you export to the Excel, what are you going to use that for? Or what workflow does that help you with? And then what do you do with that Excel sheet afterwards? You might be able to find that instead of just saving them some extra time to get that into Excel, you might be able to save them 5 hours, because that thing that they were doing in Excel, once they downloaded it, now you could build that right into your tool, right into your software. And no longer, they don't even need to export it to Excel, because that report or whatever, that number is right there. So that's kind of what I'm getting at there, is as you're reading between the lines of these support tickets, trying to figure out, is the answer there, or do I need to do a little bit more discovery and ask a few more questions to this customer?
Right now, every investor and board member is telling tech companies to just add AI. In the book, you mentioned that they don't even know what the problem they are trying to solve. How should a product builder use the problem first method to evaluate an AI feature request without getting swept away in the hype?
Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. AI is great, and we use AI daily at Ambiki. We use it, both on the development team, like internally, we're using it, and we're also, building features in our software for our customers that they can use AI-powered features. But I don't think you want to blindly just say like, all right, like we need to add AI because our investors said so, or because everybody else is doing it, right? And one area that we've kind of been contrarian on that is we've seen a lot of companies rushing to add an AI chatbot, and like, how fast can we replace our support team? And for us, we've gone in the opposite direction of like, you can come to Ambiki and you get a real human support. And we found that was important for us because of the nature of the software we were building, that these medical EMR systems are very complex, and these speech therapy private practices all have very different workflows and somewhat different terminology that they use. And we knew that like an AI chatbot was going to just frustrate them and not give them the answer they needed. They really needed a clinician, someone who has been in the field, who can understand their business, their problems, and talk with them. So, what an AI chatbot might have worked great for another company, like it might not work for your business. So it's really about understanding your customers, the unique problems they have, and before just jumping to slap AI on something, like making sure that it's there for a purpose and that it solves the right thing.
You dedicate a portion of the book to the art of saying no to customers, calling complexity the silent killer. Can you tell us about the story of the discount codes we didn't build, and how saying no actually protected your product?
Yeah, so I think that you have to have, as the product owner or as the founder, you want to have the vision of 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what do I want my product to look like? But within that vision, like on a day-to-day basis, you're going to have great customers' requests coming in, and like their feedback is going to be a huge driver to the things you're building, and being able to listen to them. Like there's gold in those hills. Like you want to listen to them. You want that feedback. You want to see how they're using your product. But it also needs to fit into this vision that you have for it. So it's the fine art of being able to understand like that thing that they're asking for. How does that fit into the bigger vision? Because where you don't want to end up is if you are just a feature factory and you're just building everything that they ask for, you're going to end up 5 years later with this product that is very complex. It has a million features, and it's difficult to use. And you're wondering like, why is no one adopting this? Why am I getting bad reviews? Why are customers struggling to understand this? Why does it take us so long to train new users on this platform? So it's the tough balance of being able to listen to the customers while at the same time having a very strong and clear vision of where you want that product to be 3-5 years in the future.
So last question, Kevin. If a listener is sitting at their desk right now about to greenlight a new feature because a client requested it, which is the one question they need to stop and ask themselves before they let their engineering team touch it?
So pretty simply, what problem are we solving? Just as simple as that. And can you do that without the solution language going into that? So can you articulate that problem just as it is? So one game that I've actually had our team play a few times is to go through some customer support request and play, problem or solution. And just that simple act of like really thinking about the words and like, all right, is that a problem or is that the solution? So if you can just do that exercise a couple times with your team, I think you'll start to see where it can be sneaky sometimes and it can be slight, but that solution can start to drip into the problem. So if you are able to, and it sounds easy. It sounds like very simple, but if you can articulate that problem without the solution language, you'll have a great head start at making sure that you're on the right path.
And I like the thing in the book where you're very clearly building a culture, this problem first culture, and you're explaining to me, who knows nothing about problem first culture, and you're going, well, have you thought about doing this game with your people and this and da. I said, oh no, I never thought about that, and I really like that as well. So thank you, Kevin. Anyway, thank you. The book is The Problem First Method, a framework for innovative product builders. So, Kevin, if I wanted to buy a copy of this, where can I get it from?
So on my website, problemfirstmethod.com, you can get the ebook and the audiobook. And if you want the paperback or the hardcover, it's on amazon.com.
And where can we find information about you?
LinkedIn is the best place. I also have my own website, kevinsdiaz.com, where everything I write on LinkedIn, I also put there, and that has information about the book as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for the book, and thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. It's